welcome to this edition of Optimal Talks. In this series of frank conversations, I will chat to a diverse range of security specialists and industry influencers to explore their opinions and ideas, picking apart some of the key issues we all face today. I hope you enjoy the next 30 minutes. If you do, leave us your thoughts and comments and spread the word. Thanks. I know it's been a while. We have had a bit of a lull in the Optimal Talk series, but we're back, and I'm really pleased to catch Frank second time round. Frank's been a good year since we last talked, but I think time is really good now to talk about something that's really close to your heart, and how it's evolved, because I feel like this project has evolved really quickly, and the project I'm talking about is Rural Safeguard. Now, I know what Rural Safeguard is, but why don't you just first of all tell us what Rural Safeguard is aiming to achieve, and then we'll dig into that.
Yeah, well, thanks for inviting us back on, Rick, and we chat regularly about this. And Rural Safeguard is about it's a program that we want to put all of the experience and knowledge that we've gained over a number of years within the private security sector and our former military career, and help farmers and those that live within the rural communities, so outside of our towns and cities, help them reduce the likelihood of them becoming a victim of crime. And there's a lot of crime, organized crime gangs and disaffected youths that are cutting around our countryside, just really, really making it hard for those that live, work, rest and play in the countryside to prosper and to enjoy their life. And that's something that we can do. We can just bring this knowledge together and push it to the right people so they've got the right level of information.
I think projects like this, when it first was conceived by you, Richard, seemed like a really tough ask. You know, I think having worked with National Rural Crime Network, we know the challenges not just with farmers and the victims of those crimes to buy into protect themselves, but also government and other sort of areas of the rural communities. It to me it seemed like this is a folly. What I've come to understand is that with passion that you've brought, and Richard, you've spun us round. We now are bought into this, but your background is not just military, is it? So tell us why this. You know, what's your backstory that makes this such a passionate thing for you?
So I'm born and bred in Lincolnshire, in the Fens, close to a little town called Spalding. So we're on the border of Cambridgeshire and Lincolnshire, but we were arable farmers. My stepfather, from the age of 5, I lived with him and my mother on a farm, and that was the main central farm of a huge arable farm. And all of the equipment, the tractors and the trailers and the combined harvesters and everything were harboured up in and around our house. And I went out right through till I was 16. When I joined the army, I lived in this sort of environment. We actually moved away from the farmhouse because my stepfather changed his role. But I didn't do a paper round. I picked strawberries. You know, I was an army cadet, but I also went bulb picking and bulb riddling, and we prepared flowers to go into supermarkets and everything. So I've been working on the land, you know, right through to my 16th birthday. And then that's what I think gave me that sort of physical resilience and that willingness to join the army as an infantier. And I joined the army as a Royal Anglian prior to transferring to the military police. And then my 24 years in the military police gave me that mindset of, you know, sort of fighting crime, I suppose you could say. Mm. And then, you know, that sort of foundation in the military police put me through into my commercial security pathway, and I enjoyed that time. So putting all that together, and I'm toward the end of my career, right? This is sort of probably my last rodeo, is that I am going to pay back into that which I came from, you know, back into the rural communities. And I've really, really enjoyed what I've done so far, what I've learned so far, which has been an immense amount. And there's one good thing that the farming and agricultural sector will give you, and that is a real honest and candid response to any bird brain idea that you pitch to them. And what Richard West is the Richard you mentioned about quite a few times. What Richard West and I have done over the last sort of probably second half of last year, 2024, and the first 7 or 8 months of this year is really engage with farmers, with growers, so horticulture and agriculture, and also the forestry, the arborists within the forestry sector, and pitch ideas at them and have them knocked about and be open to criticism, and try and take that theory and that practical experience from sectors like the oil and gas sector or nuclear security or entertainment or events management or corporate security, take those concepts and try and see how they bed in, how they float with those within those agricultural, horticultural and forestry sectors. And most times out of more than not, they do sit well. And it's just about then sort of how to phrase what it is we're trying to achieve to this new audience.
What people don't know about me is I come from a family of farmers. My dad grew up on my grandfather's farm in the Wirral, just outside Thornton Hough. In fact, they've got a small holding there that's leased from the Leverhulme estate, Lord Leverhulme being Lever Soaps, Unilever, and therefore. And now that farm, 2 farms actually next door to each other, now run by my uncle. And my cousin is has all the equipment and, leases himself out to help other farms in the whole area. So what I've seen changes, theft from farms was always an issue. My dad has a million stories of issues that they had when he was a boy, sort of in the late 40s, 50s, into the 60s, when he left off to be a haulier. But now what I see my cousin owning is a level of value of equipment and a sophistication of that equipment. A tractor is like a starship now, and the equipment that's in it is so technologically advanced. It's crazy, and that I think has increased the need to protect this equipment. But knowing my own family, the desire or the knowledge to protect that increased value has not gone anywhere. It's still the same as it was 50 years ago, and that's the problem we're kind of facing, I think. Yeah,
it is. So harvester, combine harvester, I've got a brand new combine harvester, and it'll cost you £680,000.
Yeah.
A tractor now that's worth its salt, and there's some really huge tractors, and there's some, all different sizes, but you're looking at 300,000 for an average tractor now.
Yeah.
And the men and women that work within the agricultural sector, they don't buy these tractors outright. They buy them over. They could, of course, but they buy them over a period of 7, 8, 10 years. They are capital investment pieces of equipment. And then, of course, there's a smaller and more nimble equipment, such as the all-terrain vehicles, the Polaris, the ATVs, the things that they use to move around their large workplaces.
Yeah.
And some of which are real difficult ground to cover. They are, stolen regularly, daily.
Yeah.
And quite often, I haven't met a farmer yet. And I introduce myself, and if we're exhibiting at an agricultural show or a county show, we're branded. We've got our branded gazebo, and one of the questions is, have you been a victim of rural crime? Or I go into a livestock market and sort of sit down and have chats with these guys and girls that are selling their lambs or buying their heifers, and we just talk about it. And every single one of them's got a story, Rick. Every single one of them. Whether it's their tools out there, their workshops, or their vehicles out their farmyards, or it's their animals out of their fields, cattle rustling and sheep theft isn't some story that you read about when you was a young kid. This is happening every single day, every single day.
One of the stories that we came across recently, which I thought was really abhorrent, was the idea that the pig farmers are facing now with they're not even stealing the pigs.
Mate,
they're butchering them in the fields.
Let me tell you that story because it is something that needs to be heard. North Norfolk County Show. Me and one of the guys in the team, Charlie Frank, we're chatting to somebody, and another guy comes over, another farmer comes over, and he says, "Look," he says, "guys, I'm toward the end of my tether. I'm a pig farmer, and I farm across North Norfolk, and I have a lot of pigs. And my worst night was I had 100 pigs stolen from one of my fields." And what we first do, of course, is that we need to understand the characteristics of the farm and the daily routine of the farmer before we can offer some advice. And he said to me, "Have you got a solution?" I said, "No, I haven't, unfortunately, because we hadn't had that conversation yet."
Yeah.
And then he said to me, "Let me tell you a bit more." He said that, I had my staff go out into the fields and they find butchered carcasses of butchered animals. And the thieves will take exactly what they want and leave everything else behind. He said that I had one of my prize sows, that's probably going to give me 100 piglets later in life, over the next 10, 15 years, dead, cut for the meat. They don't understand the value of what that animal gives to me, the farmer, and my insurance company or the police will think, "Oh, it's a pig. So what?"
Yeah.
But that is my livelihood for the next 10 years. This is him telling us, right?
Yeah.
And now farmers are pretty stoic people. And this guy was getting incredibly distressed. And I could tell that he was hurting and he wanted a solution. So we've obviously pledged to go and work with him and try and find something. But it's about understanding the land, and it's about how he uses the land with a pair of security goggles on, right, rather than a pair of farmer goggles on. And I don't know how he farms it. I don't know what his routine is, but if we can understand that routine, and then we do understand the attack methodology of the bad guys, whether they be organized crime, nomadic traveling families, or whatever it is. We do understand a lot about that. Not everything, of course we don't, but we understand a lot about that, and we can match those two together, look at his vulnerabilities, look at their strengths, and see whether we can put something in place to reduce the likelihood of that reoccurrence.
So we know, so far you've mentioned theft of high value machinery, all-terrain vehicles, slaughtering of animals, for butchering them for cuts of meat. What else are we dealing with? Because it's not just the theft of or damage of, it's the impact on the family. If you get burgled, they might not have stolen much, but that's invasion of your space, and then your sense of safety and well-being, and how that impacts you, in a safety sense.
It is. It's a bit like all of us working from home, right? Me and you are fortunate enough to be able to work from home. This is our place of work. It's our residence. It's also where we enjoy our family time. It's where we play. And it's very similar to with a farmer. If somebody's in your house and rooting around your office, you're not going to be happy. You're going to feel, vulnerable. And it's the same on a farmyard. Just because these guys and girls, these bad guys, come into the farmyard and drive around, or into the fields and drive around, that's an invasion that's an incursion into their safe place. And the bit that people often, they all know the crime, the figures, the financial impact of these types of things. And only in July, the National Farmers Union, Mutual, the insurance side of that National Farmers Union, the Mutual is an insurance side of a sort of membership body. The Mutual put out their annual report, and this year they were celebrating. They were not celebrating as in cheering. They were saying that the impact to them on their claims has reduced to around 52 million in 2023 to 41.1 million in 2024. They obviously report figures a year after. And that was seen to be a fantastic success. And these figures are picked up by members of parliament, those that make the law and those that advocate. But actually, that's not the real impact. A, it's only one insurance provider in the sector, and B, it's the impact to them in playing out their claims. But the real impact, as you touched on slightly there, was the social impact, the psychological impact, the mental well-being of the farmers and their families, the sense of safety. And there's 2 or 3 sectors that you and I know, and I've worked in all 3 of them, that are prone to mental health challenges leading to suicide, people killing themselves because of these hardships. And, you know, there's the construction sector that I've worked with for the last 15 years. There's the security sector that I work in as a practitioner for many, many years. And then I've just learned, or I'm learning more about this, the agricultural sector. Those that work on our land and put food into our supermarkets and subsequently onto our forks. They work bloody long hours. They're very, very isolated, some of them, especially the family farms, like, you know, your uncle and your cousin who goes out and you know, drives tractors and harvesters for somebody else. That is a lonely existence. They're sat on their own for many, many hours. And this is somebody starting work at 7 in the morning and then in harvest time finishing at 2 in the morning.
Oh, yeah. My granddad was like, when he died, was 80 odd. He had never left the UK. The furthest he ever went on a holiday was to South Wales from the Wirral. So from literally just above North Wales to South Wales. He never learned to drive, though he drove a tractor. And his working day for every day, bar the weekend he came to visit us, started at 5, milking the cows, and then you know, finished late at night. And it is a hard life, but it is a way of life, not a job. And and hats off to that. It is a vocation, beyond a vocation. But what I want to get round to is, you know, we know, because we partner with the National Rural Crime Network. We have the privilege to speak to and understand and know rural crime partnerships, the sort of the national rural policing teams. They struggle with the volume. They're making impact, but it's a tough gig when you compare what rural crime requires against what's happening in urban environments and with organized crime and county lines, and it does touch across. So how is rural safeguard sort of supplementing what the rural policing teams are trying to achieve?
So first and foremost, I should take my hat off. We should take our collective caps off and doff them to people like Tim Passmore, who's the chair of the National Rural Crime Network. He's also the PCC of Suffolk, and Stuart Hand, who is the day-to-day facilitator and champion for rural crime within the National Rural Crime Network. And I inherited that relationship when I came to work with and for Optimal Risk, and that's really the bedrock of what we've built our program on. The program is not about replacing the police. You know, we're not trying to set up a pseudo police force. And we use a graphic in our program when we pitch this to stakeholders and potential investors, because of course we're always looking for investment, aren't we? I do this now as part of almost a sort of a super hobby. I have to work on other areas to earn the money. And then I dedicate sort of 6-7 hours a day to this after having done my sort of, fee paying money. But anyway, so how are we different to the rural crime policing teams? And they are really good people, by the way. A police officer will typically go to a crime scene with a view of gathering evidence to identify an offender, to substantiate a charge, to get a prosecution to punish. Right? And they're about identifying those bad uns that are doing this, raw crime. Now, they have a police warrant and powers to investigate and arrest warrant, all that sort of thing. We don't have that. What we have, or what we've done, and this is where it comes back to our prior experience, what we've done is taken the best bits of other sectors and industries and brought them through. And we brought through this concept, the safety concept of root cause analysis. So what we do is, having the police been given the time to do what it is they are doing, we're not trampling over a crime scene. We don't even go to the crime scene. We visit the site that the incident occurred. And we're trying to identify the conditions that enable that theft or that crime to occur. What's allowed it to happen? We understand what's failed, because often or not, there's something there that's been designed or installed to try and prevent this theft, right? So why did it fail, or what condition it was in when it did fail? We then look at working with our partners, and we're building our trusted suppliers to find affordable solutions, affordable being the key word, to reduce the likelihood. Because crime and re-victimization in the rural communities is rife. Once these adversaries get a pathway into steal or to play, let's talk about hare coursing later, for them to enjoy themselves on a farmer's land, they will keep coming back, and they will come back time and time and time again. And the travelling families, the Gypsy Romany travelling families, I'm sure they've got spot maps. I'm sure they've got these little, they drop a pin where they've been successful, and they pass it around their communities, and people keep coming back to the same place time and time again. So what we've got to do is find a business model that augments what the rural policing teams do through the 53 county police forces. What are they doing, and how can we support them? We're not trying to replace them. We are absolutely not.
And so what's technology can be a solution, but it sounds to me that, the opinions of those that are victims of these crimes, and maybe the culture, if you like. How much of this is a technical solution? How much of it is an influencing solution?
So let me talk a little bit about what the aims are of our particular program. And rural safeguard is something that we've been working on now for a long time. We look at the academic side, we look at the operational side, and we look at the delivery side. What our mission statement is to equip the farmers, the growers, or the arborists with the right information, i.e. knowledge, the skills, the behaviours, to be able to safeguard themselves, and to be able to do it themselves without having to keep calling in, external support. And we want to be that trusted source of information. So by pulling all of the good stuff that's around, including from the police and the insurance sector and from other sectors, pull all that together. We want to enable the farmers and the landowners to improve their defence, because if we can remove the opportunity to commit crime, then the crime itself doesn't occur, right? So, and we do that, right, Rick? You're absolutely right. We do that through a number of different things, but influencing behaviours, personally, being an advocate of security awareness, behavioural-based security. Influencing behaviours is the biggest bang of the book for the book. And remember I said about affordability earlier. If we're asking people to buy technical solutions, they've got the capital investment, they've got the operational costs, and they've got the repair and maintenance costs. And that's not always available to them. They can't keep paying out time and time again. But if we can influence them to change their behaviours, or if they've already got their technical solutions in place, adapting how they use that type of technology, then we're going to have a more robust defence. And the last mission statement that we've got really is that we want to bring the next generation along with us. So it's about educating and engaging with the Federation of Young Farmers, for instance, with getting into some of the universities to put in modules or elements, guest lecturing on an element of farm management. That's the type of thing we want to do. So we start to evolve the thought process of those that are going into farming, the new entrants, and it doesn't have to be young, it could just be new entrants, to start adopting different behaviours. And I think that's the best bang for the buck is a combination of all of it. And I know there's no silver bullet. So it's about layered defence. It's about defence in depth, and it's about understanding the vulnerabilities and the weaknesses in everything they do. Close and lock the gate. Guess what? The gate's vulnerable, as is the lock. So it's not the foolproof solution, although that really, really does help. And another thing that really, really does help is taking the keys out the ignition. And that's a behavioural thing. Grandad did it. and I say granddad, male. Mum and dad did it, because now most farms are run by a very powerful men-women team, and now this next generation. And when I've been to exhibiting at trade shows, agricultural sector trade shows and county fairs, there are so many more young ladies joining the agricultural sector and influencing the way that it's going to be the forward path than what I ever imagined there to be. Construction industry, very few ladies, very few women, but now I'm seeing this different dynamic in the agricultural sector. Very, very powerful. And this has given us this diverse thought that we both know comes with getting a diverse workforce.
So I think, in terms of risk management, it seems like currently the status quo is transfer the risk. There is very little effort. It may be because it's a busy job, and stopping and opening and shutting and closing a gate 50 times a day is a chore that just, they'll take that opportunity that it's not going to happen, but it does. Moving from a risk transference to a risk reduction focus is the challenge, would you say?
Yeah, definitely. And there's some key wordage here. If I speak to our policing colleagues, they talk about crime prevention. And there's a lot of people that are in our private sector calling about prevention. And you cannot prevent crime. If you and I can prevent crime, guess what? We're not doing this podcast. We're on an island somewhere, really enjoying ourselves next to Richard Branson, right? But we reduce the likelihood. And it's about what can you influence. You can influence two things. If you think of the risk bow tie, you've got your event in the middle, but to the left-hand side, you're looking about deter, detect, and delay. You're looking about doing something that's going to have a positive impact on one of those effects. I want to deter, I want to delay, and I want to detect them at an early stage possible. So on the right-hand side, it gives us time to respond. The risk management strategy of most of the family succession farmers is cross fingers. And they absolutely hope that it doesn't happen to them. And if it does happen to them, it's part of doing business. We'll go and buy some more. I spoke to one chap in a livestock market near me, and we're chatting away, and he was really keen to tell me about this instance where he had a white van had come onto his yard. The guy had asked him, what is this number 54? And he said, no, mate, this is High Top Farm. And he went, oh, sorry, wrong place. And he knew that was suspicious. 3 days later, workshop absolutely ransacked, tools gone. And I said to him, oh, how long did it take you to get your tools back? Because I knew that it was about getting a crime number and going to the insurance company and getting the tools back. And he said, oh, not long at all, not long at all. I said, where did you get your tools from then? And he looked at his friend and smiled, and he said, tool store. No, what was it? What's that place called? What's the place called? And I said, mate, you've never been to a tool store in your life. You took it from the car boot market, didn't you? He looked at his mate again and smiled. And he went, no, I went to, what's it called? And I said, mate, you are part of the problem, because you are buying off the car boot. Those tools were stolen from a farmer in Cheshire 2 weeks ago. The tools that were taken from your farm last weekend is being sold in Lincolnshire or Cambridgeshire or Northumbria. You are fueling this market, right? So the sort of forensic DNA in, right? It's a brilliant thing. Forensic solutions where you can uniquely mark all of your stuff. 50 pieces of equipment, 50 tools for 50 quid.
Yeah.
A lot of the partners that we signpost people to are things like those forensic DNA marking companies. There's industry standards with a thing called the combined, the construction equipment security and registration scheme, CESA. Those are the little triangles that are on the tractors. I've spoken to farmers, Rick, where they didn't even know what that was. And they were insured by a prominent insurance company that give them 12.5% off the insurance of that particular vehicle. And they didn't even know what it was. So sometimes all we are doing is we are increasing knowledge and reducing complacency, because especially those farmers now that are in their mid-range, 40s to 30s to 40s, they are incredibly well educated, practitioners in their field. They go to agricultural college, they go to agricultural university, they understand about farm and land management, and they really, really do understand the complexities of their particular skill set, right? But they don't think of it through an adversarial pair of goggles. They don't look at their land as being a potential crime scene, so they don't think about reducing it. You spoke about a guy or a girl getting off their tractor 30 times a day to go out in the farmyard, right? And by the way, we can't protect a farm; we protect farm yards, and there's a massive difference there again.
Of course.
We've done a lot of research to define all of these different things. Spoke to them. They're not going to get on and off their tractor to open and close the gate. So for £6,000, yes, it's a big sum of money, but we signpost them to companies that provide affordable automatic sliding gates. So that sliding gate is a good deterrent. Criminals don't like trying to bash their vehicles through a physical barrier, right? They can also facilitate this ease of in and out. So you're getting this access control by default, just like we do in our corporate offices or in our protected sites. The farms can do that very quickly and very easily by spreading this capital investment over a 5, 6, 7 year term. And what we're trying to do, and I agree with you, we're not 100% successful yet, is we're trying to create this concentric layer of defense. So there's layers and layers and layers of security defense, and then get the insurance companies to recognize the value of a farmer who's adopted these behaviors, and give them some sort of discount. We found that the farmers, and you need to shut me up, mate, when you've got another question, because I'll go on forever and ever. But the farmers, they want four or five things, right? We've determined what they need to do, how do we sell this concept to them? I'm not talking about raw safeguard. I'm talking about how do we encourage them to protect their own yards, farmyards. They want a number of things. The first thing is it's either going to have to make them money or not cost them money.
Right.
So if we can get an insurance company to give them a discretionary a premium rate, then it's going to save them money, right? So it's going to pay for itself. It's either going to, so that's a bottom line type thing, right? It's got to be positive on the bottom line. The second thing is it's got to increase their way of life or their efficiency, so they're able to do more for less. So expecting them to get off their tractor 4, 5, 6 times an hour to go in and out the gate, they're not going to do it. But if we can get them to open and close the gate so they can go in and out that amount of times without having to get off the tractor, it's saving them a lot of money. And by the way, some of these tractors are 3 meters, they're climbing up a ladder 3 minutes to get in and out. They're not, it's an effort. There's no doubt about that. And it's also the safety hazards. So it's got to make their work life easier or more efficient. They can do more with less time, or they can do more in the same time. And the third one is that they've got to be able, or they want to, their desire is to hand over the farm to the next generation in a better condition than what they received it from their parents. Mm-hmm. So if we can demonstrate to them that they've got this longevity, this long-term improvement of their business efficiency, then it's a win-win-win, right? But your face tells me everything, Rick. It's an incredibly hard sell to change that behavior.
Yeah, but it's not. It's no different to any business. What you've just said, if we weren't talking about farms, we'd be talking about a business investing in security infrastructure to reduce losses. Does not add value in terms of profit margins, and therefore it's a grudge purchase, and that's just that's always the way. And so what we're coming back to earlier, we were talking about proactive risk management around the risk event, the risk bow tie, as you said, proactive risk management and reactive risk management. So what are the top proactive easy wins that you can get people to subscribe to without too much effort?
Yeah. Changing their behaviors around how they store their equipment.
So lock it away At the end of the day,
lock it or lose it. Yeah. And an example of this would be we equate the tractor on a farm to being the cart horse, the old farm horse. That's why we measure their capability in horsepower.
Yep.
We are encouraged, but tractors are huge. They get cannibalized. Bits get stolen off them. There's very few big tractors that get stolen because they're just very hard to maneuver and hide whilst in transit. But the smaller kits that go in the back of a transit van, the ATVs, all-terrain vehicles, these little quad bike type things that you see the farmers bombing around on, we encourage them to treat them like they would their farm dog, right? Because it's the farm dog. So find a kennel, put it into its kennel every time you leave it unattended. Tether it to the kennel. Use a strong chain or use some form of mechanical device. Make sure it's marked. It's like you would tag your dog. A lot of some of these farm dogs are hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of equipment. The actual physical dog itself, a working dog. It's been bred through many linear lines of breeding. But they're tagged. They microchip them. They have their unique identification papers and everything. And that's what we want the farmer to do is tag it with forensic DNA marking, track it, put a tracking device in there that can be tracked if stolen, and have some form of set it up, configure that tracking system correctly. If we wanted to let's put us back into a corporate environment. If we wanted to safeguard the data room or the server, it's probably within the field of view of a surveillance camera. So let's do the same here. That £750,000 worth of harvester, let's put it into the field of view of a properly well configured surveillance system, video surveillance system. Yeah. I tell you what, Rick, and I know nearly, I would say 95%. If I say to a farmer, what are you doing to protect your farm? They'll all say, oh, what do you mean cameras? Yeah, I've got some cameras. Yeah, cameras. Yeah, cameras are the answer. And and I know that cameras are not the answer, especially if they're off Amazon, they're bolted to a fence post by the farmer and they come through to their cell phone. And that cell phone is alarming 5, 6, 7 times a night. And the farmer is all false alarms. What do? And when they do get up in the morning, they're absolutely knackered because this thing's been buzzing on their bedside cabinet, causing levels of anxiety, getting the family wound up because dad's alarm went off again last night. It's this whole cradle to grave solution of, looking at what is it you are trying to achieve. We call that operational requirements, right? What is it we are trying to achieve, right through to the sort of regular review, maintenance, and scheduled repairs and scheduled maintenance at the other side. They don't. That's not within the mindset of an average farmer. It's buy it, bolt it on, deal with the consequence. I went to a chicken farmer. Sorry, man. Let me just tell you this story about a chicken farmer in Cambridgeshire. Right, Charlie, chicken farmer in Cambridgeshire, really, really intelligent guy, really nice guy. Been a victim of crime quite a few times, and he'd spent a hell of a lot of money on cameras. Bought the cameras, quality cameras. Bought the cameras. Got his electrician mate to fit them. Coming through to his cell phone, continuously alarming. Guess what? Switched them off because it was a pain in the arse.
Yeah.
All that capital investment lost.
Yeah.
Lost.
We do residential, like super prime, ultra prime residential security surveys, much the same as a farm. A farm is an estate. Quite often, some of the houses we review are in, hundreds of acres of land as well. And you're right, you can't secure the entire farm because the perimeter is just too big. You can't put a fence around that. So we identify what is the used critical private area. So it's usually the immediate garden around the home, the fabric of the home, doors, windows, and stuff. One of the key mitigations we put into place is to prevent vehicles getting in, because if you can get a vehicle in, you can steal bigger stuff. If you can't get a vehicle in, you can only steal what you can carry, which in terms of a farm, I think it would occur to me, means that virtually nothing could be stolen, because everything they want to steal from a working farm is beyond something you could put in a backpack and scoot off through the bushes. So, I mean, how much of this mitigation is around preventing vehicles getting on site?
Yeah. So again, let's go back to we only advocate how to protect farm yards.
Yeah, yards.
So
Yeah.
so we look at being able to reduce the likelihood of an unauthorized vehicle getting into the yard.
Yeah.
And we look at reducing the likeliness of or the opportunity for an unauthorized person to get into a building or a vehicle if the vehicle is parked outside of the building. So again, it's layered defense. It's that understanding the operational requirement. Farms often they don't have boundaries or solid complete boundaries, and they often have multiple entries to and from the farm, because they're designed, they've been designed, or they're not designed actually, they've evolved over a number of years. And when they don't use the gate or don't want to use the gate, they just leave it open, and they make a new gate. Or if they expand the yard to include a couple more barns, then the first gate that they had needs to be bigger or in a different place.
Yeah.
So the first thing we start suggesting to the farmers is that we start saying, right, do you need to use that? No, right, let's just take it out. Let's build something in there, or put something there that's a physical barrier to prevent the vehicle getting in. Right? And a lot of the farmers have the equipment on site to be able to do that. Ditch and berm, dig a big hole, plant a hedge on top of the berm, right? The mound. So they have the capability, and they have the if they've got the intent, then they can achieve it. And I'm looking at a picture on my wall in my office now, and there's a farmer, flat cap farmer, leaning on an old dried stone wall. Dry stone walling is a skill that we're losing across the countryside, but we need to bring it back in. But the people that used to build the dry stone walls, they used what they had close by, and they created physical barriers to prevent livestock getting in or out, wild animals getting in and livestock getting out, right? That's what we need. And they take years and years and years and years to build this network of walls.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we need to. We're not saying let's go and do this over the weekend, boys. Let's go, or girls. Let's go and do this over the next 10 years.
Mm.
And that will tick you a box where you've got to hand over a better, more secure, safer farm than what you took from your parents.
And what you've just said is that's defensible space theory.
It is.
In the urban environment has evolved into third generation crime prevention through environmental design. So how come it's evolved in the urban environment? And I guess I know why, because it's urban planning and it's more professional than a farm with its isolated sort of needs and one family that's looking after it. So they'd have to understand defensible space theory to build those barriers and reduce
that's what we're
access.
Doing.
Yeah,
and that's what we're doing, mate. We're increasing that knowledge of information and experience and knowledge that we're taking from one sector and bringing it back into this sector.
Right.
Because let me just remind you what the police's mandate is. The police's mandate is to get a conviction and punish offenders. Right? They spend very little time or resource educating, and I use the word educating farmers because you'll never educate a farmer, but sharing knowledge with farmers so they're more defended and they're better defended. Our mission statement number 2 is about trying to create better protected farms. And this is where the behavioural based comes in.
In 5 years, let's say just a random number, Rural Safeguard is achieving its aim. What does that look like? It's a successful program. What does that look like to you? What's your ideal?
So my ideal is that we're running this as part of a collective countryside land management program. We're not a bolt-on. We're part of that central DNA. The same as we are looking for farm safety culture to be developed. We want its safety and security culture to be developed as part of the wider land management concept. Same as everything at the moment is about regeneration. It's about environmental stewardship. It's about making sure that our farmers are our custodians of the countryside. We want them to do that in a secure way. The program would be nationally recognized as a benchmark, as a criteria, as a kite mark of, good way of protecting farms. we don't have, or we have limited crime. It's a hostile environment for criminals to perpetrate their crimes. We have got a series of farm businesses that are early adopters and strong advocates. We've got more and more farms that are registering and displaying their Royal Safeguard certification as being, independently assessed for their level of resilience.
Yeah.
We've got members of Parliament and those that make rules understanding that this is a good thing to do. Just as a sideshow, I spoke to Robbie Moore the other day, who's the shadow minister for EFRA, so for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. And what he said at the end of our one-to-one conversation was, this is out of the box thinking. This is something that needs to be, will you send me that information so I can advocate on your behalf? And this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to be, we're trying to be an organization that's trying to move this, change the way that we do things. We're not just about, yes, of course we need to take these offenders off the street and lock them away, but of course there's no places. But we also need the community of the rural communities to understand how they can better protect themselves, and that's where we want to be. And how are we going to do this? Right, we are going to have. So this program is run by 5 chartered security professionals, you being one of them, of course. I know you know these answers, but for the benefit of those listening, 5 chartered security professionals are currently creating the governance model for this program. We are then going to recruit, train, and equip with knowledge regional advisors. Those regional advisors are going to go out and work alongside, the NFU, who work regionally, the Countryside Land and Business Association, CLA, who work regionally, and get into that same mindset. So we're going to be chameleons, and we're going to adopt the culture and the configuration of those that we are trying to serve. We're humble enough to recognize that that's what they currently do. Why not get on there? And these regional advisors are going to have relationships through, other service providers, whether they be land agents or whether they be farm management service providers. And we're going to get out there and advocate these farms and farm clusters to change their behaviors, to adopt this technology that you talked about, the forensic DNA marking, the tracking systems, the video surveillance systems, the physical barriers, the gates, the strong boxes in homes, using people that produce high quality safe rooms and or property safes. The innovative and technical animal livestock marking systems that are out there for different reasons. They've got systems out there now, Rick, that if a cow is under the weather, or a sheep is not eating the right amount of food based on their movements, based on their gestation systems, their body temperature, it alerts the farmer. So God forbid, we could quite easily put a location tracker in there, so that when someone suddenly starts running at 30 miles an hour and it's going over the county border because it's not running, it's in the back of a van, the farmer's going to know about it.
Yeah.
So what's out there now, all we've got to do is not try and recreate a whole new, suite of technical solutions, is just evolve slightly what's already there to bring in and harness that protective quality that is already there. If they are geofencing a farm to safeguard and manage their livestock, let's use that geofencing to alert the farmer that a sheep is going 30 miles an hour down the A303.
So I see that, because people that maybe are ignorant to this might just be listening because it's a security webinar, but not all farms are family-owned farms. Some farms, like Velcor and the likes, are super conglomerate commercial entities. Now, how does this differ between dealing with a farmer who's a third generation owner with a large Velcor, for instance?
It's all about the governance. So a lot of farms now are absolutely right. You say Velcor down the road, headquartered in Wiltshire. They are they farm land and manage land for the ultra rich, mostly. And they've got a huge acreage, probably the biggest in Europe, that they got under their management scheme. They would approach this significantly different to the third or fourth generation hereditary succession farm. So we're cognizant of that. We know that if we're talking about the business model behind this program, we know that there's a different way of selling and advocating this service or this mindset to them. The succession farmers, let's talk about farming in farmers in general. The people that actually, sit on the tractor and till the land or look after the livestock. We've determined that there's 4 demographics. There's the older demographics, the sort of 75, 80 and beyond age group. We call them the 80s. And they are probably, and they won't, I'm going to use a phrase that might ruffle a few feathers, but they are taking a pension from the farm. They've really worked hard through their whole life. They haven't got a private pension. Their farm is their pension. Yeah. And this is where you get a lot of the great grief with the inheritance tax that the current government, not to politicize this, but that they are grieved because they have no planning time to find a pension elsewhere. Right? So they are they're the 80s. The 60s are probably the decision makers currently. They hold the purse strings, and they are now forging their own legacy to pass on to their children. The 40s are probably the backbone, the workhorse, the innovators, and those people that have been and got a bit of experience away from the farm, but have now returned to the farm. The farm is their main life passion and only income source. And they are influencing the purse holders, the 60-year-olds, and they're trying to evolve and diversify. Then you've got the 20s. The 20s are the sort of 4th generation now in the family, if they're lucky enough to have 4th generation. They've left school. They may have gone through agricultural college. They're at an agricultural university, or they've left university and they are working outside of the family farm. They might be on a Nuffield Trust scholarship, learning and educating themselves overseas, or learning about a different type of farming to what their family farm is. Or they're in a different business. They're a banker, or they're a train driver, or they're doing something that, because the farm can't support 4 generations, the income can't support. But they are, and we hope that their intent is to come and be, the next generation. And of course, you've got anomalies in all the way through. You've got 17-year-olds now that haven't been to college that are really grafting on the family farm and being looked after, and they've probably got mum and grandma and granddad, as their role models. And a bit like, it sounds like your grandfather, hadn't travelled anywhere. He'd literally born and bred and never left the farm. But that's uncommon nowadays. And what a lot of young farmers, 20s to 30s, will do is go and work, doing the same sort of work, but in a different environment. They might go to Australia, or they might go to, originate in Lincolnshire, but working in Devon, to find out different ways of doing different things. And with the advent of, and talking about the influence of technology, with the advent of social media, there is an absolute wash of social media megastars in the agricultural sector that are making more money out of their YouTubing than they are out of their ploughing and tilling and livestock management. And I love it because, of course, as somebody returning to farming, having done 40 years away from it, 45 years away from it now, I'm learning, and it's a significant different environment now to what it was when I left in 1982. So there is a significant change, but those four generations, they would manage their farm and interact with this program so much different, in a different way to what a farming business like Velcor or Dyson Farming, or those other companies that run this as their their main. They are delivering governance and management rather than farming. But again, there's a lot of them come from farming families, and this is their diversification.
Yeah.
They're not doing it now. They're helping other people and facilitate other people doing it.
So I know you've been taking the message to the audience. We can't talk about this in a security community. So you've been out to Llama, you've been to Serials, you've been to all these different, the Suffolk show, and you're really taking the message to the communities, which is absolutely brilliant. What's coming up in the the remainder of this year?
Yeah, so we're going to the agroforestry show now in early September. And that's going to be the first time out of real agriculture, horticulture. This is where we're going to start talking to the arborists and those that manage our forestry. So that's going to be a different, an exciting trip. And what we do is, Charlie, Frank and I, is that we take his van with a tent and we camp on the site. So we don't just do the sort of 4 hours stood on our 3x3 gazebo trade stand. We actually immerse ourselves in the community, and we do the country and western. We do it's real good fun. It's good fun. So this is good fun, and this is really why I'm so passionate about it. So that's a different mindset. We're then also going to go to the I think Midlands Manufacturers show, which is where the equipment manufacturers are pitching up at Newark, the Lincolnshire showground, to talk about big pieces of equipment, and this is where we're going to go in there and try and influence them to design in. So secure by design, right? You've heard all of this before. Design in, good secure GPS systems, for instance, and the agri-tech that's in a cab nowadays. The other people will advocate that you take it out at the end of every night. Well, they're not going to take it out because they don't want to reconfigure it in the morning. So we want to be able to, can they do that into strong boxes, or can we get things like Kensington locks for a piece of agri-tech? It's the concepts there. We just got to influence it. So we're going to go there with a view of trying to push this. But ultimately, we've really got to get, and we are talking to organisations. We've got to get people to help us fund this program, because at the moment, I explained to you, I'm sort of almost doing this as a hobby, although I'm an enthusiastic hobbyist, and I do. This is pretty much when I'm not doing surveys of client sites on what we would call a typical physical security survey, or if I'm not, working with other government programs, then this is where I fall back to. But so we've got to really get like-minded, enthusiastic, rich, resource-heavy partners to help us deliver this program in its entirety.
So that seems to me to be a large business's ESG. If we're looking at ESG to give in terms of philanthropy to aiding farmers or ensuring food security, crops, making life easier and more protected so that our agricultural sector thrives, that seems like a really good incentive to contribute to, because it will have measurable outcomes. And it would be great to get some more debate going around how companies can invest in programs like this to help you succeed, because at the minute you are gaining mastery every day with everybody you speak to about new problems and thinking about new solutions to problems. Mike has given you the autonomy to build this program the way you need it to be built, and you've definitely got purpose. So this is Daniel Pink's, this is the Holy Trinity, the mastery, autonomy and purpose. What's missing is investment to create the applications, the technology, the intelligence platforms, the mass notification platforms that will really bring this to the community and make it really easy for them to engage with it, find the information they want, so that it's not just a report that goes in a drawer and isn't looked at again. So how are you approaching that side of fundraising?
Yeah, and we should, again, I've taken my hat off quite a few times today, but I'll take one off to Mike O'Neill as well. So he's putting in a considerable amount of our company money into it, which we're absolutely trying to get match funding on that. We have partnered, and I think they'll be happy for us to declare this in this podcast as reasonably public information. Now, we partnered with Harper Adams, and Harper Adams
the
is
university,
one of the preeminent universities, in the agricultural sector. And we've got a phenomenal criminologist working with us, Dr. Cressida Smith, and she is their she runs their criminology department. And a chap called Phil is helping us out, and we're going to partner and go to Innovate UK, so a government funding program, to ask for some money to help us create an application. There'll be a platform, so it'll be a computer and phone-based application, so we can start sharing some of this information. So if a farmer goes out there and they've done their moisture check of their grain, and they can't harvest it for, because it's above a certain level, they've got, an hour on their hands. They can very quickly open up the app and start, a bit of we would call it CPD, just a bit of personal development. And, so we want to be able to do that. So Harper Adams is absolutely brilliant. And, there are a couple of other opportunities where we need partnershiping with the self-assessment app or platform is one part. And also the training modules, to bring innovative training modules to market that could probably go through that app that Harper Adams are helping us create. These training modules as well. And let me link it to Protect UK. Right? I think most of our security practitioners that are listening to this will understand what Protect UK is. They were heavily sponsored, and the ACT app, ACT. Action Counters Terrorism, was the forerunner or the majority of the Protect UK app. That was sponsored by Marks and Spencers. They had a huge input into that. We want a Marks and Spencers, and the environmental, social, and governance ESG program that you spoke about earlier. The social side of it, if Morrison's or Tesco's or Arla, dairy, if Aldi, Lidl, one of those just said, we really like what it is you're doing. How can we help? We can co-brand. This could be the Tesco's crime reduction, program. We're not precious about. All we want to do is get this information and reach and deliver on our mission statement. We want the country. So, you said to me, if in 5 years' time, what's your vision? That's our vision, right? We want people to help us do that. And I can't keep asking Charlie Frank to come and do this with me as a favour.
No.
He's an independent security consultant, a member of the Association of Security Consultants. He's a professional man in his own right. He's got to earn. So I've got to earn. You have, and all five of us have got to make a living. So. This is about getting people to buy into that vision, see what Robbie Moore, the shadow minister saw. This is innovative, Frank. This is out of the box. This will make a difference if you can get that to market, and that's all we're asking for, is somebody to see that vision, buy into us, the enthusiasm, the professionalism, the dedication, the passion that we've got, and help us help the farmers. Because if we don't help the farmers, that industry's dying. They've got a lot of stressors, not least of which is the recent government processes, but the weather. They can't control the weather. They pretty much are finding that they can't really influence government policy. They definitely can't influence the way that the grain and the livestock is sold on a national or an international market, right? And they can't. They find it very difficult to control disease, because once disease gets there, it's there. And ask Jeremy Clarkson about that with his latest TB outbreak, right? But what they can control is one of those stresses is what we're helping them influence, and that's about people problems, adversarial risk, bad people doing bad things. And we think they can influence that. So if we can take that away and take that stress away as well, the stress that's associated with thinking that every time you go into your farmyard, your back garden, there's somebody there, and these people, they arrive in stolen vehicles. They've got balaclavas on, they're in black clad clothing. They look sinister, and they are professional, Rick. These organised crime gangs are professional people. They steal to order, and they know exactly what they are doing. And currently, and unfortunately, and I don't want to finish this off on a negative, but they are willing to use violence. So we can do something, and if we can get the right people behind us, we can really, really make this go. And we know within the people that we already know, and those that are in the, let's say, the veteran community, the services veteran community, we've got the right people to be able to make this work. We really, really have.
You know what? You've seen a problem that's close to your heart. You've come up with solutions that I've seen evolve over the past, since January, really evolve and gain traction, like it has its own momentum now. And I feel that this will succeed because your passion behind it and the collaboration with others that I think feel it, from government and academia and other professionals that are willing to pitch in pre-revenue. This is going to succeed. I have no doubt, and we'll have another catch up when it is and when it's been developed, and where it's come to, because I think it's if nothing else, for the farming community, this is a wake up call, and hopefully not a wake up call, but a refreshment of what can be done and where to get advice from. But from the security side of things, it's like a really good example of seeing the problem, coming up with solutions. It's problem solving 101, and it's a collaborative project as well. So I think that's why we've done it on this in-house for Optimal Talks. Charlie, will have a great time at the forestry event. I almost tempted to dig my tent out and come along myself, but
you're more welcome.
But I think I'm in America at that point. But never mind. It's great, Frank, talking to you. We're just over the hour. If there's anything, a last sort of thought, what would it be for the listener?
Yeah, and thanks for the opportunity, because I was going to ask for it. Yes, there is a last thought, and the last thought is to all of those potential partners that can make this be successful. And I'm talking about the countryside membership bodies like the National Farmers Union, the Country Land and Business Association, the Countryside Alliance. I've started here, but I can't list them all. But there are so many different, the Farming Community Network. There's so many different organisations that we can work with. We don't want to be an adversary of anybody else, what they're already doing. We want to be real trusted partners of the rural policing teams. We want the police and crime commissioners to understand what it is we are trying to do. We want the supermarkets that receive the goods from the farms to think and see us as being collaborative partners that can help really make an impact on reducing this rural crime. We want those that work within the agri tech sectors and the equipment manufacturers. We want those that are advocates of safe and secure farming and sustainable and environmentally friendly and regeneration farming. Those people in the media that have got podcasts or publications, magazines that can really start shining a light on what it is we're trying to do, to say, look, there's a group of really good people here trying to help you do things that are going to make you safer and more secure on your farm. Yeah. So I plead to all of those sorts of organisations to try and help us be successful.
Well, look, if that's you, here's Frank's email address on the bottom of the screen now. Reach out, get involved. It's a great cause, Frank, and I know it's more altruism than anything else for you, but we look forward to seeing how this develops. It's been great chatting to you again. We'll get this up hopefully within a week or so.
Thank you, mate.
But I will chat to you later, mate. Thanks for your time.
All right. Cheers, Rick. Thank you very much. Stay safe.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.